Back with another live webinar, and today we're going to be talking about elevating your track training with Stryd. So we've got some really fantastic workout of the weeks this month as part of our track run workout collection. You can see them all here. You can also access them in the Stryd mobile app if you have the Stryd membership. So go check those out if you do have the Stryd membership. I'm going to be covering these in depth here a little later on in the broadcast, but we've got the 1K, 600, 400, 200. A faster workout in the 300, 200, 100, more of a dynamic workout in the 400, 1200 meter workout, and then another very dynamic workout in 400 meters, 1600 meter, and 200 meters. So we're going to be covering these in depth, and we're also going to be talking about how to use Stryd to really amp up the precision of your track workouts. So let's jump into it here. The topics for today. So we've got 5 really great topics. Instantly dial in your intensity with power. We're going to be talking about how to use power on the track to just get that precision intensity dialed in on for those track workouts. Check peak power to really track performance, especially for those shorter reps, 50 meters, 100 meters. The peak power is going to be really useful for those scenarios. Monitor rep by rep intensity for consistency, keeping those nice consistent reps at even intensity so you make it all the way through your workout. You finish feeling great. One of the major advantages of using power on the track is we know that the track gives you that precision, the exact distances, knowing the exact times you're hitting. And with Stryd, you can also really quantify the impact and the control for wind and environmental conditions. And then finally, using the track profile for the Stryd's best responsiveness on the next gen Stryd. So we're also going to be talking about that. So first, the advantages of using power for track training. So if you're already on a track, you've already got incredible precision, you know exactly how far you're running, the exact times you're running. So why do I need to add power into this equation? Isn't time and distance enough? And the reason we use Stryd on the track is for these 3 reasons. It helps you improve the workout execution. You're going to get more insights from training, and you're also going to be able to track your progress with far more precision. So just going point by point here, improving the workout execution, the simple point there is, just looking at power mid-rep, dialing in on that intensity, that's going to help you improve the workout execution. You're going to be getting more insights from your training with Stryd's, complementary metrics like your leg spring stiffness, your ground contact time, your form power, seeing how those are impacted over the course of a workout, and then tracking progress. Exactly as I talked about in terms of environmental conditions, if you can adjust for the impact of heat and humidity and wind, you might be making tremendous progress, even though your times are slower on a track, simply because you're working harder in those more difficult conditions. So those are some major advantages, taking the precision of your track training to the next level. So let's look at some use cases here. So first is instantly dial in on your intensity with power. So, anyone who's running on track knows the power of the stopwatch. And, with some quick mental math, every time you cross, a 100-meter line or a 50-meter line, you can basically calculate your pace, just instantly in your mind over the last 100 meters and know, I was about on track, or, I was really falling off. But, one of the really dangerous things here, and I'm really guilty of this, is for those reps, those 400 meter, those 200 meter reps where you start out too fast or you start out too slow, and, you're checking your time every 100 meters, you're a little ahead of your goal or a little behind your goal, you can just, either pick it up that last 100 meters or fall behind the, dial down the intensity during the last 100 meters to basically hit your time goal for the entire rep, even though your intensity was not constant. So, even though with just a stopwatch, you can check in, it also allows you to cheat a little bit and, hit your time goals without really maintaining an even intensity. But with Stryd, the major advantage is you can just check at any point in time. People with a GPS watch, they'd like to be able to check, they try and check, but, the challenge with the GPS watch is it's not so responsive to your real-time pace. But with Stryd and with power, it is super responsive. So just at any point in time, I can look down on my watch and see if I'm on track on my intensity, which is a major advantage. And that kind of, makes it easier to execute the workout, but it also prevents that cheating aspect. And I put cheating in quotes because, sometimes you're cheating because you're going too fast. You can start out too hard and then really kind of dial back the intensity during the later half of a rep, which is, we all feel a little guilty about. But when you have that power, you're just able to make sure you're, always at the target. So the next one, and this is a really interesting one, especially for anyone who's doing sprint workouts or anyone that's doing 100 or 50-meter repetitions, and that is checking the peak power. So this is a workout I did recently. You can see it starts out with 5 100-meter repetitions and then 5 50-meter repetitions. And how I would evaluate this workout is the first half was very successful, and the second half was definitely less successful. And let me, talk a little bit more on what I mean by that. So we can see, or let's just use the white line. The white line there, I've kind of set that as kind of my goal intensity. That was my goal intensity for this workout. So that first rep, I was basically perfect. I was just slightly over that goal intensity, just slightly over that white line, which was fantastic. That second rep, I was not able to get up to speed. I wasn't able to get up to my peak power during that second rep. And I knew that during those final 3 reps, I would really have to start ramping that intensity back up so I can get above that white line. And that's what I was able to do is I successfully picked up my intensity in those later repetitions and really I'm able to really track that peak intensity. And that's something you really can't do with just a stopwatch or any other tool because it's not going to be responsive to pick that peak intensity in the middle of those reps. But with Stryd, you can see your peak intensity and make sure that you're really getting that strong, powerful push off and that high intensity you want during those shorter 100-meter, 50-meter repetitions. So, once again, that first part of the workout was really successful. I dipped a bit on the second rep, but I picked it up for those final 3. And for the second half of this workout, the 5 times 50 meters, I was not able to maintain that same consistency. You can see I was all over the place. I was a little shallow on the first rep. I overshot on the second. I tried to compensate, but I really wasn't able to dial in and kind of get that, reach that peak power consistently during those 550-meter reps. So that's a learning experience. That's something I can learn from. And basically just say, I have to really dial in my focus for those shorter repetitions. I have to make sure I'm really getting that strong push up. I'm trying to really reach that peak intensity, and then I'll be able to execute my workouts more successfully. So, once again, a really unique advantage of using Stryd for post workout and even mid workout analysis. Next is monitoring that rep by rep intensity for consistency. And this I really think is the most useful thing you can use Stryd for because of that, it's just that precision that you just can't get with other tools. And we can see on the left side, a very unsteady execution of a workout. On the right side, a very steady execution of a workout here. So, typically in the left is kind of more what we see where you're starting out very strong, that power is peaking within the first, let's say these are 400-meter repetition, that power is peaking in the first 100 meters of that 400-meter repetition, and then that intensity is dropping off towards the second half. Typically this is a pattern we see for critical power tests, which is a bit expected because critical power tests, you don't really know your capabilities. So you just try and push it really hard at the beginning and just try and hold on for as long as possible. And that's fine for a critical power test. But for these track workouts, if you're running a Stryd on the track, you probably already have a really good idea of your intensity targets in mind. So we don't have to guess. We don't have to get all amped up and try and push as hard as we possibly can during the start of those reps. Since we have power targets in mind, you can just follow the power target, and you can see on the right side of the image that's what happened. The power target was followed. You can see those blue boxes. This is using the workout pairing feature on Stryd. You can see that the intensity is matching up very well. That yellow power line is matching up very well against the prescribed power targets for the workout, and you can see it's basically staying right in that blue target throughout the entire course, that repetition. That's fantastic. So once again, when you have Stryd for these track workouts, often, especially for us endurance runners, we think we get on the track, we just have to go all out. We just have to go all out and we just have to push as hard as we can. That's not the case. Since we have Stryd, we have very precision power targets. You want to be checking those. You want to be checking those power targets even 50 meters in when you kind of reach a stable speed. Make sure you're not, over exceeding or overshooting what you should be targeting. And if you do that, right at the start of the rep, you're not going to run into the pattern on the left. Your workout is going to look, very nicely like the pattern on the right. So you really want to keep that, power steady during those longer repetitions. Here's another fantastic benefit, control for wind and environmental conditions. So let's see what this looks like here. So, on a track, it's oval, and typically when it's windy, the wind is only blowing in one direction. So this often means, and sometimes the wind will line up perfectly with those straightaways. And on one straightaway, you might be running right into the wind, and on the back straightaway, you might have that wind assisting you, which can be very difficult and very deceiving if you're running with a stopwatch because things are going to feel so easy when you have the wind at your back, and they're going to feel so difficult to be hitting those targets when you have the wind at your front in your face. And with Stryd, if you're just monitoring that power target, it's so simple because the power is going to incorporate that air power, and you can just check, midway through, you're going to that straightaway, 50 meters in, you can just check your intensities, on track during those headwind sections, and then make sure your intensity is on track during those tailwind sections. And if you're doing longer repetitions that involve multiple laps around the track, let's say a 800-meter or even 1,000-meter repetition or 1,200 meters, this is going to be really important because you're going to be hitting those headwinds and tailwinds up to 3 times each. So if you're monitoring your power target in those scenarios, you're going to keep that power far more even over the course of a rep. And then, also it's just great to analyze afterwards here. Here's a post-workout analysis. You can see, what was throwing me off my rhythm. Was it the tailwind? Was it the headwind? If I was not keeping that even power intensity, what threw me off my rhythm? What do I need to work on for future workouts? And maybe it wasn't the headwind or tailwind. Maybe, you just got in your own head and you just ran too fast with the tailwind and didn't run quick enough into the headwind, and that's what gave you the challenge. So you want to really use it in both ways. You want to be using it during the workout by monitoring your watch, and you want to be using it after the workout to see what went well and what did not go well. Here's something else that's really cool, adjusting for heat and humidity. So we just did a fantastic webinar and blog post on this recently, and you can find this at blog.stryd.com. So if you really want to go in depth here and see all the different ways you can adjust your power for heat and humidity, go check that out at blog.stryd.com. I'm going to give a few quick examples here on how you can use this. So this happens all the time in the summer. The weather's great. The snow's melted off the track. You've gotten those spring workouts in. You've done great in the spring, and now you're going into the summer. It's a lot hotter now, and you want to be matching those. You want to be exceeding those workouts you had in the spring as you're getting fitter. You're preparing for your fall races. So, how do you account for that? The impact of heat and humidity, and it's super easy with running power. So I pulled up a screenshot here of the superpower calculator, and for details on the superpower calculator, go check out that blog post I just referenced at blog.stryd.com. But you can see the inputs here are really simple. So I'm just inputting my altitude, temperature, and humidity, and inputting today's altitude, temperature, and humidity. So let's say in the spring, the late spring, it's 70 degrees out. I'm having fantastic workouts. And then, as I transition into the summer, it's a lot hotter. It's 20 degrees hotter Fahrenheit. So what does that power target look like, making that 20-degree Fahrenheit jump, or in this case, around 10 degrees Celsius? And in this case, I'm adjusting my power target down by 3%. It's about a 3% difference. So if let's say I execute a workout in the spring at 300 watts, and I execute that same workout in the summer in much hotter conditions at 300 watts, um, my wattage output stayed the same, but my fitness, and my performance, that would have improved by around 3% because I'm executing the same power in less favorable conditions. So once again, you can just play with this tool, just input a few numbers into the spreadsheet tool. It's really fantastic. And there's a few other ways also in that blog post on how to look at things. So go experiment with that, and you'll basically be able to just do a head-to-head comparison of performance in different conditions. And I threw this one in just as an example. Let's say, you're going into the fall, you're going into the winter, it's getting cooler. Typically, the heat has a really big impact, but the coolness as you become come into more favorable conditions, it's not really going to adjust your power target so much. So, performance in 70-degree Fahrenheit weather is very similar to 40-degree Fahrenheit weather. No adjustments necessary. But that adjustment might be huge if you go from 90 degrees Fahrenheit down to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So, just something to keep in mind. There's a lot of different scenarios you can play with there in the superpower calculator. So let's say you want the best power responsiveness. We've actually, with the next gen Stryd, we built a track profile. So the track profile gives you up to 5 times improved power responsiveness on Stryd. So this is really easy to access. This is available on both Garmin Watch and Apple Watch. If you have the Stryd app on your Apple Watch, you can just select that run profile before you run. And on the Garmin Watch here, I've got a Garmin Watch here. You just open into the Stryd workout app. We got the Stryd workout app here. Let's just say I want to go for I've got a track workout. Let's say I import a track workout into my watch, or I just want to do an open run. We can just select that run profile there and toggle into a track run profile. And once you run track run profile, this should only be used on tracks where you're running in flat conditions. And if you use in those conditions, your power is going to be more responsive. Let's say you're going to the straightaways, you're coming around the bend, and you just want to instantly check and make sure you're on track. The power is going to be far more responsive. So definitely check that out for take advantage of all the great features of the next gen Stryd. So once again, our webinar is based around our Workout of the Week series, and this is available for all Stryd membership users. So go check out the track run workouts in the Workout of the Week collection. And let's just take a closer look at some of these because we still have a lot of time left in September. These workouts are going to be available. If you want to get these workouts in before your fall races, I'd highly recommend it. I will definitely be doing some. And the first workout here is the 1, 6, 4, and 200-meter run. So here's a workout where it's front loaded with a lot of volume and finishing with speed. And this can be really beneficial for some runners if you have really great success with those shorter repetitions. Kind of get the longer reps out of the way first while you're fresh, and then really lean on your natural ability there for those faster reps towards the end. And this is a great workout for 10K to half marathon runners. And you can also expand this and add more volume with the Stryd workout builders. So if you want to add in some extra 1K, 600 meter, 400 meter, 200 meter reps, it's super easy to do and basically tailor the workout to your needs. The next workout is the 3-2-1. Push beyond your comfort zone and ignite your inner flame with this new workout. So this is a fantastic workout for 5K racers. It's a bit shorter distance. This can be used in the days leading up to a 5K race. It's going to help you dial in on that speed, that intensity you need to have great success. So, this is a fantastic workout if you're running that 5K distance. And one more workout to preview here. It's the 400 meter and 1200 meter. So this is a great way to elevate your run performance with a very dynamic workout. Once again, this is more beneficial for kind of the 10K runners and up. It's a great workout if you're, let's say you have a 400 meter, session on your calendar. You want to make this more dynamic. Add this workout in. It's going to give you those 400 meter reps, and it's also going to allow you to add in some different challenges with the 1200 meter reps to really make it more dynamic. So those are some of the great workouts. Stay tuned. We're going to have one more workout next week. We're going to be previewing in our weekly email. If you want access to these workout of the week, upgrade to the Stryd membership and experience the best of Stryd. And if you want access to the more responsive power, those track run profiles, upgrade to the next gen Stryd at stryd.com/store. I know many of you are already running with the next gen Stryd, so definitely check out that track run profile if you are executing any of these track run workouts. And questions. So I'm here. Let's have some questions, and I will answer them. So we do have one question already. What are the benefits of speed training or track training when you're gearing up for a marathon or longer distance? Yeah, so this is, the answer to this is, it helps with the turnover and push out of your comfort zone so the marathon power feels easier. And that's from Kaylee, a very fast runner. Kaylee's our producer here. She helped write the answer here. So once again, the benefit of track running is it helps with that turnover and push out your comfort zone so the marathon power feels easier. And I really feel the same. I'm training for a half marathon right now. I've talked about this in past webinars. Um, I want to be running in the hour and a half range for my half marathon, and that's pretty fast. Pretty fast. I mean, I know if there's a lot of fast runners in the Stryd community, so I know a lot of folks are running under that hour and a half mark, but for me, that's pretty fast for that distance. I'm going to have to be running under 7 minutes per mile, and those intensities can be very uncomfortable for me. But if I go out and do a track workout and I'm hitting those 1,200-meter reps at 5 minutes per mile or even faster, in that kind of range, that gives me great confidence that I can you know cruise at those speeds of around 6.5 to 7 minute miles for that half marathon. So um, if you find, those higher intensities and you want to be, dropping your times, you find those intensities very intimidating. These track workouts can definitely add a lot of confidence. And, there's physiological reasons for this too. I'm really talking about it from a mental aspect, um, on the benefit of track workouts. But, um, if you're also going down from, a marathon distance to a half marathon distance and want to amp up your speed, the track workouts can be a great advantage there too. So, there's a lot of different applications, all depending on what kind of, running books you're reading or what kind of coach you're listening to. They're all going to give you a different perspective, but it can also just be a great way to substitute in one of your more difficult workouts in your calendar. Let's say you do want to get on the track and you haven't been on the track for a while. Sub out one of those workouts and add in one of our great workouts from our workout of the week collection and just try it out. Add some variety to your training as well. So that's the only question we have. Thanks everyone for joining. If you have any questions, of course, go to the Stryd community on Facebook and post a question. We can get an answer there. Comment on the YouTube video, and we can always answer and follow up later on. But that's all we have for today. Thanks everyone for joining. Go check out those Stryd Workout of the Week collections and get